So just after Kapila Muni took birth, then Kardama Muni approaches him in a secluded place to offer his prayers out of his natural love towards his son. So Kapiladev offers his obeisances to his own son and thanks the Supreme Lord for the mercy that he has received by having the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son. So he expresses how the Supreme Lord has descended to alleviate the sufferings of the conditioned souls, and he contemplates on his great fortune to be able to see him face to face, and who is so difficult to approach even for the greatest yogis. And therefore, he is extremely grateful that the Supreme Lord has appeared in his own home as his son. And so he expresses in the 28th verse that after many births, mature yogis by complete trance in yoga endeavor in secluded places to see the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not considering the negligence of ordinary householders like us. That very same Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in our homes just to support his devotees. So in this 29th verse, Srila Prabhupada glorifies the potency of devotional service. So Prabhupada writes that devotional service is such a powerful transcendental method that it surpasses all other methods of transcendental realization. The Lord says, therefore, that he lives neither in Vaikuntha nor in the heart of a yogi, but he lives where his pure devotees are always chanting and glorifying him. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Bhakta Vatsal. He is never described as Jnani Vatsal or Yogi Vatsal. He is always described as Bhakta Vatsal because he is more inclined towards his devotees than towards other transcendentalists. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that only a devotee can understand him as he is. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. One can understand me only by devotional service, not otherwise. So in this way, Kardama Muni, after contemplating on his great fortune and surrendering himself to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is ultimately the independent Lord and who is independently powerful and transcendental, Kardama Muni then expresses his desire before the Supreme Lord and begs for the fulfillment of his desire. So he is expressing in the 34th verse that today I have something to ask from you, who are the Lord of all living entities. Since I have now been liberated by you from my debts to my father, and since all my desires are fulfilled, I wish to accept the order of an itinerant mendicant. Renouncing this family life, I wish to wander about free from lamentation, thinking always of you in my heart. So it is astounding that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has just taken birth in his home, and Kardama Muni is contemplating on leaving home. In fact, that's what he places as his heart's desire before the Supreme Lord who has just appeared. So Prabhupada naturally therefore discusses why Kardama Muni was choosing to leave home in spite of the Lord's appearance in their home. So two purports are noteworthy here. So first, purport number 34, where Prabhupada talks about the duty of a renunciant and how how Kardama Muni is wanting to fulfill that duty of a renunciant. So Prabhupada is writing, actually, sannyas or renunciation of material household life necessitates complete absorption in Krishna consciousness and immersion in the self. So sannyas generally means two things: absorption in Krishna, and second, immersion in the spiritual conception of life. One does not take sannyas, freedom from family responsibility, in the renounced order of life to make another family or to create an embarrassing transcendental fraud in the name of sannyas. The sannyasi's business is not to become proprietor of so many things and amass money from the innocent public. A sannyasi is proud. What is the sannyasi proud about? A sannyasi is proud that he is always thinking of Krishna within himself. And then Prabhupada describes the two kinds of devotees of the Lord, Goshtyanandi and Atmanandi. So Goshtyanandi are those who are preachers, preaching the glories of the Lord and distributing Krishna consciousness to many, in this way organizing missionary activities. And Atmanandi are self-satisfied souls, and they do not take the risk of preaching work. They remain therefore alone with God. So Prabhupada is fitting in Kardama Muni in that category. So Prabhupada is writing in this classification was Kardama Muni. He wanted to be free from all anxieties and remain alone within his heart with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Parivraja means an itinerant mendicant. A mendicant sannyasi should not live anywhere more than 3 days. He must be always moving because his duty is to move from door to door and enlighten people about Krishna consciousness. And we can also see in the ISKCON society how the sannyasis, they perform similar function, combination of these two functions. They are moving around the parivraja and at the same time distributing Krishna consciousness, and therefore in one sense they are combination of all of these. So Goshtyanandi, Atmanandi and Parivraja. So Prabhupada now answers more directly this interesting question that if the Supreme Lord has advented just now in Kardama Muni's home as his son, what is propelling Kardama Muni to want to leave home? Even if he were to seek God realization, God is right at home. So why leave home? That's the key question. So, of course, an overall or overarching understanding that we can carry is that ultimately the will of Krishna dictates or supersedes every other consideration. And Kardama Muni has sensed the will of the Supreme Lord in the form of the will of Lord Kapila Dev, that he should renounce home. So he sensed that desire. And therefore, Prabhupada is expressing very clearly here that the purpose that Kapila Dev wanted from Kardama Muni was fulfilled through Kardama Muni's exhibition of full renunciation. And therefore, in the purport number 35, Prabhupada is talking about the importance of a householder's duty to leave home after he turns 50. And therefore, Prabhupada is writing that Kardama Muni's example is very instructive. For in spite of having the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son, he left home just to obey the authority of the Vedic injunction. So this is the key point. Kardama Muni states here the main purpose of his leaving home. While traveling all over the world as a mendicant, he would always remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart and thereby be free from all anxieties of material existence. In Kali Yuga, however, the injunction is that no one should accept sannyas. So this is in the next paragraph Prabhupada is writing. Of course, those who actually follow the rules and regulations must take sannyas. Generally, however, people are unable to accept sannyas life, and therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stressed, Kalo nastyeva 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 gatir anyatha. In this age, there is no other alternative than to chant the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. The main purpose of sannyas life is to be in constant companionship with the Supreme Lord, either by thinking of him within the heart or hearing of him through oral reception. So two ways to always being in company of the Supreme Lord, either thinking within the heart or hearing about the Supreme Lord. In this age, hearing is more important than thinking because one's thinking may be disturbed by mental agitation. But if one concentrates on hearing, he will be forced to associate with the sound vibration of Krishna. Krishna and the sound vibration Krishna are non-different. So if one loudly vibrates Hare Krishna, he will be able to think of Krishna immediately. This process of chanting is the best process of self-realization in this age. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya preached it so nicely for the benefit of all humanity. So this purport is really wonderful because first Prabhupada brings out the purpose of Kardama Muni to leave home, which is basically to set the right example. And secondly, Prabhupada is explaining how the essence of that renunciation is to always be absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that absorption has two categories, either to think about the Supreme Lord or to hear of him. So now thinking may get interrupted through our own mental agitation, but hearing can be very forceful, or hearing can forcefully inject Krishna into our heart. And therefore, hearing itself has two categories again, to hear about the Supreme Lord and to hear while we are chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And Prabhupada kind of mixes both of these facets of hearing. And these are the greatest resources we have to experience the spirit of renunciation that Kardama Muni is experiencing, or at least intending to experience upon leaving home. And therefore, Kapila Dev, in response to Kardama Muni's prayers as well as his request, he says that first of all, that because I have told you, like when the Supreme Lord was pleased with Kardama Muni's austerities, then the Supreme Lord has already foretold the appearance of Kapila Dev, that he is going to appear as his son. And therefore, Kapila Muni is asserting that same point, that because I had told you before that I would appear or I would become your son, I have descended to fulfill this truth. So multiple purposes. First, to fulfill his words, his own words. And then the second purpose is expressed here, that my appearance in this world is especially to explain the philosophy of Sankhya, which is highly esteemed for self-realization by those desiring freedom from the entanglement entanglement of unnecessary material desires. So, in other words, what is going to follow in this section is really an elaborate description of what we can do to become free from unnecessary material desires, because that is the goal of the Sankhya philosophy. Thank you very much.